website. So starting tomorrow, this presentation will be filmed. So we will have questions at the end. We won't film the questions, just the presentation. So I wanted to give you the heads up that we were filming first. And, you know, if anybody wants to go, wahoo, Steve, yay, yay, that's okay. All right. Good evening. My name's Steve Dillon. I'm Director of Student Services for Carmel Clay Schools. And welcome to our first session of Redistricting 101. Let's talk a little bit about what we're going to accomplish tonight. Here's our agenda tonight for our redistricting meeting. First of all, we're going to talk about an update on our current situation here in Carmel Clay Schools, why we need to redistrict. Then we're going to talk about our new redistricting process that our school board worked very hard on last year with a committee. We will talk about how you get involved if you're interested in doing so as a parent. We will talk about elementary versus middle school because we'll have two different committees, two different councils going on at the same time this year. We'll talk about the timeline for redistricting, how you stay informed if you choose not to be part of one of the councils, but you just want to stay informed. We'll share that information tonight with you. What are you going to do if you have questions? We'll share that, and then we'll end our presentation tonight with some questions from the audience. So let's get started. What is our current situation in Carmel Clay Schools? Well, we're going to talk about enrollment, and then we're going to talk about building capacities because those two go hand in hand and really dictate what we do and why we have to redistrict. So let's look at our current enrollment. I thought I'd give you a little history. My background's a history teacher, and I actually started teaching in this building a long time ago, social studies. So I always like to look at the history of things. So I thought I'd give you a 10-year look at our enrollment, starting all the way back to 2001. And this is just elementary enrollment. But as you look down the chart, you can see part of the reason why we've had to redistrict 3 times over the last 10 years. Our enrollment has continued to grow. There's a good reason for that. I think it's 2 parts. I think number one, people view Carmel, the city, as a great place to live and bring their children to attend our very, very good schools. And those are both good things, but they cause us to have increased enrollment, and the need to redistrict comes about more frequently. During this 10 years, we've built some buildings, we've expanded, but the one point that I will point out to you is this year, we haven't taken our official enrollment count yet. That is this Friday. But as of September 3rd, our elementary enrollment is actually going down 100 students. Now, several years ago, we had a demographer that did a study for Carmel Clay Schools, and he actually predicted that we would experience that in the future. Part of that, I think, has to do with our current economy. We haven't experienced as many building starts in our community. The second part of that is the amount of land that's available to build homes in Carmel is going away. Most of that is located on the west side of our district. There is a large piece on the east side, but if you've driven out on River Road recently, that's kind of just stopped right now. So someday, when the economy comes back stronger, we anticipate those housing starts to begin again. Right now, we've experienced a 100 student drop in our elementaries. Now let's look at building capacities. I did put up there building capacities 2010. I think that's important to point that out because you might go back and dig up some building capacities that look slightly different the last time we redistricted. The reason for that would be is we use our buildings differently. We use regular classrooms and turn them into special education classrooms. We have added on to some of our buildings during this time, and so this is a current snapshot of what our building capacities are. And you'll notice that I've put an asterisk beside the schools that we currently are having some problems with. All those rooms that are available for instruction in those buildings have been taken up. And we are actually in 3 of those buildings over our current educational capacity. So that also is part of the puzzle on why we need to redistrict. So currently, using our current enrollment and using our current building capacities, we have approximately 558 seats available for elementary students to use. They just happen to be mostly on the east side, and most of our kids happen to be on the west side. So, summarize that information for you. Why did the board decide that we needed to redistrict? Well, we need to redistrict because We've had increased enrollment at Town Meadow, Carmel Elementary, West Clay, College Wood Elementary Schools, as well as a declining or shifting enrollment patterns across our district, which brought us about to why we need to redistrict. I will say that we are currently looking at putting a plan in place and implementing it beginning August of 2011 for next school year. There has been no plan designed at this point. That process hasn't started. That process is waiting for this process to take place. I will also point out that new elementary boundaries could also affect current middle school boundaries. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So the good question that comes up a lot is, well, didn't we just redistrict? It seemed like we redistrict all the time. So I thought I'd share that information with you too. We redistrict in Carmel Clay Schools currently based upon need. In other words, we wait until we have a situation where one of our schools or more than one of our schools is overcrowded and we need to adjust the enrollment. We have not traditionally redistricted in advance of overcrowding. Part of the reason for that is that parents don't like for us to move their children and then there's no need for it for 4 or 5 years. So we do it on an as-needed basis in Carmel Clay Schools. We have redistricted in the last 10 years 3 times. We redistricted in the 2003-2004 school year, the 2005-2006, and our last time was in 2008-2009. So it has been 3 years since we redistricted. Question comes up a lot, and I thought I'd just go ahead and answer the question now. Well, why don't we just use portable classrooms? Matter of fact, we have a lot of folks that moved to Carmel from districts out east, eastern United States, out west, the southern states, Florida. Those are areas that popular use of portable classroom exists. We don't currently do that in Carmel Clay Schools unless we absolutely have to, and I'd like to share a couple of reasons with you why we don't do that. Currently, we have 550 available seats in our district. You saw that just a minute ago. The cost of a portable classroom is a one-time expense of approximately $42,000. Then they also carry with them an annual lease. That $42,000 covers the initial lease and the setting up of the building, installing electricity, installing all the things necessary for that portable classroom to exist. We have safety concerns for our students when we use portable classrooms. Consequently, because they travel between the buildings and the portable classrooms, we have historically hired additional instructional assistants whose job is simply to escort those students back and forth between the portable classroom and the building, making sure that they're safe. That also has an additional expense to our general fund. Also, students travel between the portable classrooms and the main building during inclement weather. Middle of the winter, it's raining. Those are not good conditions. We feel that we should have our students outside when we don't need to. Over-enrolling a building also affects the specialized areas of the building, such as the cafeteria, the media center, the restrooms, the gym, and the special subject areas. We could add 10 portable classrooms outside. That would expand the enrollment of a building by 250 with not a problem at all. The problem is the cafeteria doesn't get bigger. So consequently, instead of starting lunch at 10:10, we start lunch at 9:30 to service the extra students. Those aren't good educational decisions when we don't have to do those. And lastly, the Indiana Department of Education describes portable classrooms as a temporary facility, not intended for long-term use, only intended to help eliminate a problem until a long-term solution can be found. So, as I mentioned briefly in my opening comments, last year, anticipating that we might need to redistrict this year, our school board put together a redistricting study committee. That committee's work can be found at the web page that you see in front of you. Excuse me. And this presentation will be posted on the redistricting webpage starting tomorrow, so you could access these links. You can see all the work of that redistricting study committee. I'm going to share with you tonight what that committee proposed. They began their work in September 29th, 2009. They recommended a brand new redistricting process to our school board in May of 2010, and our board approved that process in June of 2010. So what's that process look like? Well, that process is made up of several parts, okay? First of all, after a lot of study and a survey to the community where we received 3,600 responses, which was overwhelming, but very, very positive. The feeling was that we should go to an administrative team that designs the plan. And so I'll share that administrative team with you in a minute. But they will design that plan with the input of an advisory council, a parent advisory council. The administrative team and the parent advisory council will recommend a proposed plan to our superintendent, Dr. Swenson. As always, the superintendent may accept the proposed plan, or he may modify that proposed plan, and he will recommend a plan to the school board. The school board may accept the superintendent's plan, or they may modify that plan. Ultimately, they were elected by our citizens to make those decisions, and they'll get to vote on a final plan, which we will begin implementing, and it will take effect in August of 2011. So that administrative team we talked about, what's that look like? The committee made a recommendation of the 5 administrators that should be on that team. So the Director of Student Services should be on that team. The Director of Transportation, Mr. Ron Farron, should be on that team. The Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum should be on that team. That's Dr. Amy Dudley. The Director of Special Education should be on that team. That's Mr. Jay Arthur. And an administrator from the high school should be on that team, because all students go to the high school. They're not affected by redistricting. So we have joining our team Mrs. Rhonda Eshelman. Each of these administrators were chosen for a reason. Let me explain that. Director of Student Services, I've been in charge of the redistricting process the last 3 times. I have a knowledge about redistricting. Also, my job is to make sure that my students are taken care of. Director of Transportation, Mr. Ron Farron. Redistricting affects transportation. A committee could make up a really nice redistricting plan, but later find out that it would destroy our transportation system, or some of our students might be on the bus too long because of the plan that we designed. So his input's vital to this process. Our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, Dr. Amy Dudley, she's on the committee for a variety of reasons. Number one, she's going to make sure that no curricular programs are affected as a result of redistricting. She's going to look after our E&L programs and our Title I programs that are spread out throughout our district to make sure that there's no unfair disbursement and changes in our boundaries for those programs. Likewise, our Director of Special Education, Mr. Jay Arthur, he participates in the program to look out for the needs of our special needs students. His department has worked very hard in the last couple of years to place appropriately in our buildings certain special programs so that no special student needs to ride the bus longer than they need to. We want to make sure that redistricting doesn't undo that good work. And then finally, our assistant principal from the high school, as I mentioned earlier, redistricting does not affect the high school. All students go there, and so that person's job is simply to provide another set of eyes that has no emotional ties to the redistricting process. So that's your administrative team that will be working in the next several weeks to put together their initial plan. Parent Advisory Council. This is a new item for us. We've always had parents involved in redistricting, but this is the first time we've had something called a Parent Advisory Council. We've increased the number of parents participating. There'll be 3 members from each elementary school and each middle school on the Parent Advisory Council. That's an increase of 1 extra parent per school. Their job, advise the administrative team on the proposed redistricting plan, attend meetings with members of the administrative team to view and discuss the proposed plan. They also have the job of going back to their schools, organizing and implementing communication with those schools that they represent. That might mean hosting meetings in their schools to share ideas and to get feedback from the parents in those schools. And they will share school community feedback with the administrative team. Their job is to come back with good suggestions and positive ideas on how to improve the plan.